Explained by the Billy Meier Contacts. Mysteries, myths, legends, conspiracy theories, historical inaccuracies, and more, compiled by David Chance, revised July 2, 2025.
Future Earth Humans Part 5. See also Gilgamesh. See also Hyperborea, Hyperboreans. See also Ecostones. See also Longskulls. See also Men in Black. See also Nazca Lines. See also Nocodemians. See also Patar. See also Quetzalcoatl. See also Rod. See also Starchild Skull. See also Teos Caves Metal Library. See also Tunguska Event 1908. See also UFOs Flying Saucers.
Contact Report 50.
Then you are really getting me agitated.
I do not want to, although I would like to know what you look like with an angry face. It still has to look lovely and nice. Can you be angry at all? Do you even know that in this form as we know it?
Sure, we are not above these things either. However, we are able to control ourselves much better, and accordingly, it takes longer before we lose control. Now take off your outer clothing. Here, this device will regenerate your broken ribs. All you have to do is sit here between these two poles. The rib bones will be completely regenerated after the process. Nothing will indicate that they were broken anymore. Now stay in this position for a few minutes. The whole thing is very inflamed, especially the periosteum. Unfortunately, I cannot eliminate the inflammation with this device. It would probably need about 2 months to flatten out. I will make sure it heals next time with a special apparatus. But it must be a joke, because if this alleged event were actually a real event, it would be a complete natural law-based adversity, which should be known to us without any doubt, because our geological forces register and analyze everything without the possibility of an exception. On our part, we have very little accumulation of waste. However, the resulting material is converted into usable soil and other substances in robot-operated conversion plants. This requires a very advanced technology, of which the humans on Earth are not yet capable of. In relation to this, however, the Earth humans have a similar form of the transformation of waste into soil and other substances. However, this Earth technology functions on a completely different basis than ours.
Do you drink and smoke?
No, we're not familiar with smoking. Drinking according to earthly terms is also unknown to us, although we also have drinks that are similar to alcoholic beverages.
Have you found out anything about the strange 3 dots through which I was bombarded by very negative rays in my workspace?
For this, we need a special device, which is already made by one of our technicians. We were unable to analyze anything with our previous equipment.
Contact Report 51.
Now I finally see you angry for once.
It is not easy for me because I am really angry. But the human beings of the Earth are often able to make my self-control collapse with their illogicality and unreasonableness. I did not think it was possible to ever lose control of myself.
You are only human, though much further up than us earthworms.
Contact Report 52.
But would it be possible for you now to give me 2 or 3 pieces of your food? You know, I am thinking of little tablets or whatever.
The next time I would have to bring it with me, the best would be something similar to what is on Earth, something that can also be produced here.
Thank you. As you think, maybe it is better so, because if it is something strange, then there might be difficulties. You know what people are like.
Contact Report 53.
Slowly, I find my way in the Earth-human manner of conceptualizing and thinking. I also have to learn these things first, and we are not immune to mistakes.
Contact Report 54.
In Ascot's picture, it was found that she has much longer earlobes, which have also grown much further forward than is the case with us earthworms. What is the reason for this?
I understand. It is a purely anatomical difference.
Does it not have any connection with higher intelligence, etc.?
No,
So the meaning of the speech is simply that it is a pure race characteristic, a pure anatomical difference without any intelligence evaluation meaning.
certainly.
But tell me, do you all have blue eyes?
Our eye colors are as diverse as they are on the Earth.
But yours are a pretty nice blue. They are a really enjoyable sight.
You love to compliment, thank you. This is my natural eye color, but we women also like to color our eyes. We call my homeworld on our Pleiades era, and it belongs to the solar system Taygete, along with 9 other worlds.
How long have you been stationed on the Earth, and how long has the station been in Switzerland?
I have been entrusted with tasks on the Earth for 72 years. But my fixed time is only 4 Earth years. Our station in this country was built just over 300 years ago.
Would you rather tell me how many other alien races are actually still stationed on the Earth?
There are 7 more of them.
Do you have all the stations here, and are you in contact with them?
Certainly, they all have stations on Earth, as well as we all have connections and collaborations with them, because they all belong to our Federation's realm. Thus, I am just talking about our people.
Are the Giza intelligences included in these 7 races?
They are not.
But may you explain to me how your communication works over great distances? I mean, what technological form do you use?
I can explain a few things to you, but it is not too much. Our one technical communication possibility you would call radio, but with the possibility of no delay in transmission. Also, the transmission does not take place through the normal space, but in use of the hyperspace, through which we pass our signals, disassembled, with faster than light particles, which spread over the whole hyperspace in fractions of seconds due to their millionfold speed of light, and thus form again at the same moment at the target.
What you are explaining to me is a mystery, because I do not know anything about these things. However, I have probably understood a few things. For example, the disassembling of the signals. Could it be a distortion taking place in some distortion device?
No, the disassembling is a universal expansion of the signals and impulses in relation to the speed, with just the signals and impulses charged faster than light particles, which you call tachyons.
Simya say deals with the device and then obviously talks to Quetzal in her mother tongue, which I unfortunately do not understand.
Quetzal will endeavor to find the person with his area analyzer and will also carry out the evaluation immediately. We should be expecting his result in about 20 minutes.
You said you called your home planet Era. How many human beings live there?
500 million. Approximately.
Fine, you will not have mass pileups because of overpopulation. But now, in connection with this question, I would be interested to know how many planets are inhabited in the Taygete system. You were talking about your home planet and 9 more.
Sure, in addition to my homeworld, there are 3 other planets that are habitable and inhabited. All others are already subject to die-off or are only beginning to form.
But something else, you know we do astrology on Earth, right?
Of course, it is a science that can be traced back to our ancestors, and which we still cultivate today. With you, however, it has lost most of its actual values and truths.
I am aware of that. But how does astrology work for you?
In the same forms as on Earth, of course, but with different planets and different overall perspectives.
Unfortunately, I do not know too much about these things. But what about your birthday? If you convert it to our time, when were you born?
To answer that question, I need to explain some important facts. For example, when I talk about Taygete or Alcyon, I am always referring to the whole system, not the sun or a planet itself. So I am from Taygete, that is from the system Taygete, but born on the planet Era, my homeworld, is very similar to the Earth in all things, which is why it was chosen by our ancestors as a new homeworld at the earliest times, after they had left the Earth. Thus, all data of the planet corresponds approximately to those of Earth, with only small differences. The orbit around the Sun is 365 and 1/4 days according to earthly time calculation, while 1 day according to your time is 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 14 seconds. This results in almost exactly the same orbit and time of day as Earth has. In contrast, other planets show differences, like also in the SOL system or at all other systems in the universe in general. All our time units are named differently, with us than with you, but with only small differences, they coincide with the earthly time units. So an odor is equivalent to a few fractions of a second of your hour, and even a muzal corresponds pretty much to an earthly day. Our year we have divided into 13 Asar, which means 13 months, with a compensation period of 23 years. So you can see that we are only slightly different from your calculations. Our 13 months can be divided also into your 12 months by the conversion, after which I would be born then according to your question after earthly calculation on the 7th of February.
So you would be an Aquarius too, according to our astrological data. That is almost crazy. It is just Aquarians everywhere.
You are not wrong, for according to our calculations, the day of my birth would fall into the sign of Aquarius. These constellations have been known on Earth since ancient times by our common ancestors, and the same images have also been passed down to us. Seen from our Pleiades, however, their positions are very shifted, and so, seen for us, they result in a different arrangement and a different picture. Our astrology, however, is naturally based on different constellations and values in our space structure than is the case on the Earth.
Contact Report 55.
The work ahead is very difficult and usually takes 3 to 4 weeks. Since we do not have this time available, however, we must limit ourselves to only 7 hours. Unfortunately, I can only connect you to our apparatuses for a few factors, so you have to master most of what you are learning with your own power. I love children very much.
But what can you tell us about siblings?
There's still a brother and a sister. Sure, my brother is called Yucatan the Quick One, and my sister Plagia, the one who honors the laws of sevenness.
That is interesting. Is your sister black-haired?
Sure, but how do you know that?
Well then, another thing. It is also a question from a child. How old is your father, Ptah?
759 years.
Is that after our time or after yours?
It is calculated according to your time. By the way, it was unreasonable of you to take her, Amata Stetter, to the glade. You know that I am not allowed to talk to her, and that I cannot do it for my own sake. On the other hand, consider the earth-human vibrations that are dangerous for us.
Contact Report 57.
Unfortunately, the last time I asked a question, I forgot to ask Coney. He wanted to know if the doctors on your home planet also know the diseases that we have on the Earth. He probably means whether these evils are also rampant on your homeworld or simply present. He also specifically asks about the so-called cancer. He also wants to know if you have or know other pathological evils, or if you have simply defeated the diseases.
Our scientists have already defeated many so-called diseases centuries or even millennia ago. But even today, illnesses of a diseased nature, transmitted from earlier times, still prevail on other planets. But they are no longer deadly or physically destructive in any form. In the main, they are evils of a minor nature, such as colds, etc., which can also result in pneumonia and the like, but which we are usually able to bring under control very quickly if they do not degenerate. This is also the case with other evils. We are only human life forms like the inhabitants of the earth, so we are also susceptible to certain things of a diseased nature, but are usually able to control and heal them very quickly before they really break out. There are also certain evils with us which are unknown on the earth, but to which our science has also become master. In the case of the cancer, etc., you mentioned, which is embodied in a parasitic, malfunctioning life, it has to be said that fortunately we have long since banished and conquered these diseases. This, however, was only possible when our humanity and our scientists abandoned certain negating and negative attitudes and actions, etc., and began to think and act in new forms.
So that means you cannot tell us how we can fight these nasty diseases?
With this, you unfortunately speak the truth, because the Earth human must acquire the necessary knowledge himself or herself in this regard, because they grow in themselves through it and will understand many things only through it and learn the right manner of acting. We do not have the right to influence and advance a human evolution more than is possible according to all creational natural laws and recommendations, and according to the respective level of evolution of a life form.
How many humans of your race currently live on the Earth?
Overall, there are 114.
This is a quick one. What do you call your son Taget in your own language?
Similar to yours, namely TAGET.
Aha, and what is the diameter of your home planet Era in your Pleiades system?
It is very much like Earth's, as I explained earlier.
All right, then a question that you have already answered sufficiently, and which must therefore seem illogical to you. Have some of you incarnated on the Earth?
You know that this is impossible because none of us died on the Earth, so you ask very illogically.
The next question relates to the troposphere of Era. What gases and substances does it consist of?
It is almost identical to the Earth. The tropospheres of our worlds usually contain between 75 and 70% nitrogen, 25 to 29% oxygen, and 1% trace gases such as carbon dioxide, argon, etc. Air itself has a higher oxygen content with 32.4%. Traces of argon and other gases are found at only 0.3%, and nitrogen 67.3%. However, this refers only to the planet Era, as I have explained.
That's good, but you are obviously talking about the atmosphere, although the question is related to the troposphere.
It is one and the same thing, because usually you call the troposphere the lowest layer of the atmosphere for simplicity's sake, simply the atmosphere, which, however, viewed from bottom to top, is composed of the troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, and thermosphere.
But how great is the surface gravity of Era?
The surface gravity is 1.00003, according to the Earth's basic measure, i.e., slightly more than the surface gravity of the Earth. The density is 5.521, the axis inclination 22.99 degrees, and the equator diameter 12.749 kilometers, whereby the escape velocity of 11.19 kilometers per second is to be mentioned.
But can you now tell me how many years your race has already mastered space travel? By which I mean your ancestors up to the most ancient generations?
It has already been 27 million years since our first ancestors built the first space-worthy flying vehicles. It was about 6,000 years before the Great Catastrophe when the destroyer breached into the home systems.
You said you were 114 people in total here on the Earth. Is this number constant?
No, it varies from month to month. Often we are less than 50, then again, more than 300.
Well, that depends on your duties, right?
Sure, but also with the transport of our food and other necessary things.
The question now is whether you also know something in this form. Whether you swallow any medication or the like in order to keep the offspring rate within limits, which does not work with us despite the pill.
No, we do not need these things, because in observance of the natural laws and recommendations, we align with their order and abide by the periodic rules.
So does this mean that you only make sexual love when this coincides with the female infertility period?
This is not quite so, because human life forms remain human life forms as long as they are bound to physical bodies. Sexual needs also come to light outside the infertility period of a woman, so that the needs must also be met outside this period. However, in order not to produce offspring, there are many natural aids which we always observe and apply, but this does not rule out the possibility that exceptions may come to light and offspring may be produced unintentionally. However, every woman of our race has the technological means to detect an unwanted pregnancy within 3 days. If this is the case, then natural preparations trigger early menstruation, whereby the fertilized egg is rejected before it is able to develop. Therefore, no abortion procedure, according to an earthly sense, takes place because no spirit-bearing life is destroyed by it. As you know, only at the beginning of the heart's activity, and therefore, 3 weeks after procreation, does the spirit become established in a life form of a human being, so that through this process of a prematurely triggered early menstruation, only the substantial basic substances are ejected and no life is destroyed.
But if I have understood you correctly, then you only use purely natural remedies for contraception, such as the one that you simply jump off the train in Orlikon and do not drive right through to Zurich, right?
I find it admirable how you can describe and paraphrase these concerns. Yes, it is one of our natural remedies.
Well, I do not want to ask what the other means are, because surely they are very diverse.
Sure, but the harmony between man and woman is necessary in all events. Otherwise, it would be unpleasant for one or the other partner.
But now a question that concerns us all. You know how we earthworms grapple with so-called professions. So our question now just refers to what you have actually learned as a profession.
I understand, even if we do not interpret our activities in your form. But when I have to talk about a profession, it gets a bit complicated, because I have learned several of them according to earthly human concepts. My tasks are closely connected with my learned knowledge, which relates to spiritual education, coordination, technology, archaeology research through time travel into the past, earthly religion, politics and economics, earthly history of humankind, and various other things, for which I am taught and trained in every single value. It is not the same with us as with you, because you learn only one or two professions or fields of knowledge, because with us, we usually master 12 to 30 and more fields of knowledge. Our earliest ancestors also moved through the air with extremely primitive combustion motor devices, but today it seems to us to be very adventurous, barbaric, and outrageous.
This phenomenon is a teleprojection on our part, for the purpose of triggering memory. The beings wrapped in white clothes embody our ancestors from a period of approximately 70,000 years ago, who came to Earth at that time, but who did not live in fixed houses, but in their free-floating beam ships, which they had stationed mainly over forests. The man dressed in the wonderful robe with the adorning stars was the YHWH of this emigration group, whose most distant descendants still live somewhere on the Earth as their own smallest group of former extraterrestrials, but whom we have not yet been able to find by any means imaginable. In the meantime, we could only find out with certainty that Amata, from her old personalities, must today be a very distant descendant of the brother of the former YHWH, which means that this group of extraterrestrials, who as mentioned were a part of our ancestors, must have mixed with terrestrial people here on Earth and forgot their actual origin. And to find out how these connections extend now, and how and where today's descendants of these ancestors live, is one of our tasks, and that is why we also are making an effort for Amata. Our ancestors and us in former times were called sons of heaven by the earth humans. The white figures Amata had seen on the opposite balconies are teleprojections of the old venerable ones of long-gone times. These are the beings who begat and ruled the white earthly human races. But there are also their descendants among them, who in peaceful form pushed forward and determined, up to a certain value, the later earthly development of humankind. So they are the true ancestors of the white earthly human race, while the people in gray working clothes, the folk, as Amata calls them, represent earthly mankind in all its colors and races of today, standing next to a large platform. The venerables, dressed in white mentioned above, are and were the origin of all human life existing on the earth today in their known form. Everything was determined and directed and partly pre-programmed by them, but this never elevates them to hierarchical forces or powers, because such values do not exist.
Contact Report 58.
The first refers again to the pill. You once told me that you were going to put some contraceptives in your food to keep the birth rate under control. The last time you made contact, however, you said completely different things.
Then you ask the questions very imprecisely. It is true that we add natural herbal contraceptives to our food. However, this only refers to the fact that this form of contraception is used when there is an excess birth rate. That is to say, when overpopulation problems occur. This method is usually used when a race has reached the point where it recognizes that a planet can only carry and feed a certain number of human life forms without artificial intervention. So this is related to the evolution of mind and consciousness. Otherwise, however, it is also the case that all human life forms in our worlds can voluntarily obtain the foods containing contraceptives in order to be able to regulate the number of births. Not everyone does. However, because human beings prefer to use other methods of contraception, although the active ingredients are not harmful in any way, which unfortunately cannot always be said of your contraceptives. In general, the ingesting of these foods interspersed with active substances does not therefore occur, so everything can be taken purely voluntarily. A general mandatory taking of birth control has to be reintroduced in order to bring about a normal birth rate adapted to the respective world.
Explain to him, Billy's colleague, Kobe, that even we cannot avoid doing our daily work, albeit not to the extent that is customary with you. On our home worlds, all people work their daily workload, but so do we, who have our tasks here on the earth, although our hours of employment are much higher than our home worlds and your working hours. Our hours of occupation are usually 16 of the earthly hours per day, often even more. You should also go now and bring Amata here. Here, take this. Let her chew it and eat it.
Contact Report 60.
But now another question. The next sun system seen from us belongs to the Centauri group. To my knowledge, is the first Proxima Centauri, then Alpha Centauri and Beta Centauri, which by us, though, is being called something else, namely the Barnard star or similar, which is at a distance of a little bit more than 6 light-years away from us. Now, are you informed about whether any humans live in those sun systems who come to Earth?
Certainly, I myself know, there, in other space-time structures, several dear friends in all 3 systems, although only in the Barnard system, meaning Beta Centauri, can it be discovered from Earth that small planets are circling around the sun there. But why do you ask?
It is kind of a weird story. Do you perhaps know a certain Athar and Kohun?
These are 2 dear friends of mine from the region of Proxima Centauri, but from where have you got their names? You seem to be informed about certain things from which I, so far up to now, have not given you any knowledge about.
Perhaps, but nevertheless tell me. Since when have these dear Athar and the Kohun been operating on Earth? And do they stay in contact with any humans on the Earth?
They come here often. They probably maintain contact, but not, however, in a very extensive form. They had the last important contact more than 50 years ago with a man from Germany, who also had permission to portray them very accurately. I knew nothing about all this.
There you see, even you are not all-knowing.
That I have also never claimed.
Okay, I'm just playing with you.
Contact Report 61.
Are these really pictures of my ship?
Certainly. I and Mr. Moosbrugger have also captured crazy apparitions, although we have only seen your ship.
It is puzzling to me. May I register the images?
What do you mean with that?
I will transfer the image forms to a device, after which we can then try to make an analysis.
Some schoolchildren want to give you a kitten. Will you take this?
It is an extraordinary pleasure to hear this offer, but we are not allowed to do such things.
Too bad. Do you not keep pets and such?
Sure, we also have pets. Even cats and dogs, which have been brought from the Earth to our Playaran worlds in former times, but which we do not keep in the living rooms, as you unhygienically and health-harmingly do. We must not, however, acquire terrestrial animals because they contain certain germs which no longer appear in our animals and which can also be transferred back to the animals through human life forms. This is a safety regulation, why we are not allowed to keep earthly animals.
I understand that, because we too have such provisions between our countries. But you would have the possibility of a complete disinfection, etc., would you not?
Sure, but it is our peoples and our understanding that determine whether we need an animal from another world. But such decisions only take place when it is a requirement for one of our worlds.
Tell me, what kind of administration do you have on your Pleiars? I mean a government administration.
I told you that before. There is no administration here, only the High Council. Its form is to give high advice, but never an order or an enactment in commanding form.
What do you usually wear for shoes, but not always these boot things like you and the others, right?
Our footwear is similar to yours, but it does not consist of animal skins, but of materials that we artificially produce. So is the clothing. It is very similar to the one you will be using in about 70 years.
So for us, something like utopian or futuristic.
Not exactly, but purposeful. Perhaps still somewhat strange for the terrestrial human being today. Minara takes over my task here on Earth for the time being, until the turn of the year. During this time, Kitsal, I, and the rest leave our station in Earth to return to our homeworlds. According to earthly terms, we take what you call a vacation.
But now I would be surprised. You have such beautiful black eyes, which fit perfectly to your dark skin. Here on Earth, in Africa, we have a human race which we call the Hottentots, and which has quite significant European influences. Askett once explained to me in former times that this mixture of races had developed with actual Negroes and whites or something similar. Is that correct?
Our race actually originated in very early times on this earth, because our ancestors mixed with earthlings and produced the so-called tribes of the Huns, who later joined together with Negro tribes in the African region for a very short time. From it, new races developed, so among other things, over a very long period, lead to the Hottentot. Some of these tribes reconnected with our later ancestors and begat with them our race existing today.
By the way, can you tell me what you call your mother tongue?
Do you think of our language today or of our original language?
The one which you speak today.
This is what we call SARAT.
A little weird. Is this Saratian a standard language?
On our world, yes, but not on all other worlds, for as with you, different languages prevail. But it is the case that all human life forms united with us speak a unified language, which you could call an intercosmos language. This language leads beyond our galaxy, and we call it the KOSAN language.
Very nice. How is that with you, Minara? You certainly have a special language of your own, don't you? What do you call it?
Janan.
Contact Report 62.
Please tell him, Herbert Runkle, that he does not need to thank us, because everything is given by us in honest love.
Can you tell me how many years Minara, or her people, are ahead of our overall technological evolution?
They are 3,150 years. 350 years less than with us.
How is that possible?
When Minara's people left the Earth, they had the same level as our people. But through Askett's civilization, our people were raised 350 years higher, while the other peoples are still in the stage of being taught quickly because they were given this opportunity only a few years later.
What do you do with any items that get lost and that you cannot get back for any reason? What do you do when you just cannot get it back? Maybe because it is in another person's possession.
Your question is not crazy, but very reasonable. But why do you ask?
It's because I have heard that some objects simply disappeared or burned or somehow dissolved when they were found by terrestrial people, and when the objects belonged to some kind of alien intelligence.
The reason for this lies in a total elimination of these objects. We and many other intelligences are able to totally eliminate lost things in various forms, or simply burn them to ashes. This happens by very far-reaching impulse transmitters, which are set into operation by a destruction mechanism built into each device. However, these destruction mechanisms are usually only built into devices and objects that we take with us to foreign and still lowly developed worlds. For safety reasons, so that the relevant, still low-standing life forms of a planet do not get a hold of possibilities for advancement which would be dangerous for them. These devices or objects equipped with such destruction mechanisms are usually made of plastic. For example, this small device here.
What is this white thing?
It is a selective warner.
What is this white thing?
It is a warning device that indicates to me with a fine singing tone that if, for example, someone is approaching us now and whose brainwave patterns are not recorded in the device, by which I thus mean that it registers them.
Aha, and if you lose that, you might be in a lot of trouble, huh?
Certainly not, because we always carry a second device with us. You see, this one on the belt here.
Okay, you got me. But can you perhaps demonstrate to me how you can destroy such a thing?
For the purpose of your education, sure. Look, I just throw it here on the ground, and now just step back a little. So, yes. Now look at this belt device. If you now touch these two touch surfaces here, the warning device will set itself on fire and turn into a mushy and brown-black plastic mass. Look at the device lying there and operate the two touch surfaces.
I allow myself to operate it. Fabulous, this thing really does smoke. Does it really burn to ashes?
Sure, if you let it burn long enough.
Can I have the leftovers? You know, I want them analyzed.
Sure, but then you should extinguish the mass. Otherwise, nothing remains. But do not touch it until 1.5 hours have passed, because until then, certain radiations caused by the fire are escaping.
Well, do you not think that our scientists can analyze important things out of the stuff?
This possibility is very small, because this type of plastic, which no longer reveals its original composition, is probably common on the Earth in a similar form.
Contact Report 63.
How would it be, however, if you were to lend me your radiation gun sometime? You know, it would be huge fun if you could see in the movie that I had one of those things in my hands, pointing at a small tree, and without seeing anything, the tree just falls over.
For unknowing ones, it should certainly be exciting. I will really think about it. It might actually be a lot of fun.
I recently met a seemingly nice person, a Carlo Dish from Ticino. He also prepared a report for me according to which he is said to have had contact with a certain Eloa of Cassiopeia in 1960, as he also writes here in this report.
Very few Cassiopeia planets carry human life forms, and I know very few friends there. Aniloa, however, is unknown to me on those worlds, but rather a similar name, namely Elhoa. But perhaps it is a misunderstanding of Carlo Dish, in that he misheard the name.
I just find it quite squalid that especially these two poor jerks, Michael Ahrens and Mario Bertossi, have to drag you into the dirt and claim that you want to capture and subjugate the Earth.
This assertion must testify to the truly boundless stupidity and primitiveness of these two men. For if we had ever had such actions in our minds, we would have realized such plans long ago, when Earthlings had no defensive weapons. On the other hand, even today's still very primitive weapons would not frighten us. Thus, there would be no obstacles to overcome. So why should we wait into the distant future if we wanted to conquer the Earth? Only very ill and still quite stupidly primitive brains are therefore able to hatch such nonsense, but not a brain that is already subject to intellectually based rationality. And those who believe such irrational, lying, and dirty lies are not much better off either. Every human being on the earth, on the other hand, must always do this himself or herself for the fulfillment of their duty, out of their own determination, and therefore independently of us. Never must anything in any form be dependent on us, which is why this is another reason why, as a rule, we only make ourselves visible to a few humans, beings on Earth, but this only happens when they have become aware of our existence. As little as you are ever allowed to act as a teacher, as little may we show ourselves, because only in this manner is it, and will it be, guaranteed that the Earth humans will become independent, start to think and act in their own form, in the right form, and acquire the true knowledge and freedom within and without. But if we were to show ourselves, and if you were to act as a teacher, the human beings of the Earth would once again fall into belief and remain stuck in their evolution. In that manner, nothing would be achieved, and the Earth human would not become free and independent. So the only way is that he or she is only given the basic rules of the laws and recommendations with their explanations, which he or she must, however, compile in their own thought work towards the truth and towards the knowledge. Any delivery of evidence, other than those which we have given you for evaluation, would therefore be completely out of place, for if a form of life depends only on so-called evidence of a matter, then this means nothing more than a new belief. Knowledge, truth, and wisdom, however, cannot be acquired through such proofs, but only through one's own work of thought, and through the attainment of inner clarity, through an inner creation of proof in truth. His Svath ship was a gift from Assyrian people.
You mean from people of Sirius?
Sure, from one of the two inhabited planets of Sirius, but in a different space-time continuum.
That is what I have wanted to ask you for a long time, if there are inhabited worlds somewhere.
Sure, those two, each belonging to two separate solar systems.
Contact Report 64.
The Earth human today is not yet capable of dedicating himself or herself to our concerns regarding us and our ship's existence in honest, open, and real form. These so-called ufologists, who were meant to spread the truth and pave the way for the coming of extraterrestrial intelligences, have degraded themselves to primitive semi-scientific sects and spread their unintelligent and dirty nonsense of self-created theories and lies, thereby distancing the Earth humans further and further from the truth on a global level instead of leading them towards the truth. This fact shows that the Earth human does not yet have enough real and truly knowing powers to prepare for the coming of extraterrestrial intelligences by a purposeful elucidation. Regarding his, Carlo Dish's statement that he had had contact with an Elhoa at the beginning of the 60s, 1962, I was only able to find out that at that time there were actually two Cassiopeian ships with several crew members on the Earth for about 4 months, which had also made impulse telepathic contact with two Earth humans. However, all recordings were not transmitted on the home planet, but recorded in the storage devices of the ships for reasons inexplicable to us. Unfortunately, however, our research has now revealed that one of the ships was destroyed during the return flight to the Homestar in 1962 with the entire crew, whereby all records were also destroyed. The reasons of the destruction are shrouded in darkness and could not be clarified because it took place in hyperspace, which was determined at that time by coordinate impulses. The second ship started from the Earth about 7 years ago, because the crew was expeditionarily busy until then. They had, however, no knowledge about the records of the destroyed ship, so also they could convey nothing of reference to this to the homeworld. Unfortunately, this ship did not reach home either, because some influences threw the ship into a foreign dimension when it wanted to break hyperspace. This resulted in the fact that all control devices of the home base, which were coupling remotely with the devices of the ship, suddenly did not pick up any impulses anymore when the breakthrough should have taken place, which indicates with compelling clarity that the ship was thrown into a foreign dimension. What is known about the two ships is that the destroyed aircraft was commanded by a male leader named Elhoa, while the missing ship was under the command of a certain Einhar.
Recently, Minara came and visited me quite unexpectedly when I was strolling around in the woods outside. She lent me her radiation gun, with which I shaved away some small trees in a matter of seconds by heat rays.
Contact Report 65.
Meanwhile, it was possible for me to take care of the concerns of Elhoa and Carlo Dish. In connection with a station on Proxima Centauri, it turned out that all Elhoa's records are stored there. The records say that Elhoa was in brief contact with two Earthlings. A Carlo Dish, however, was not one of them.